On this Sunday night, show of force.
Time to go home.
Police ramp up measures at the Ambassador Bridge. How soon traffic could be back to normal. Growing resistance. Ottawa residents clash with protesters. Frustrated police aren't doing more.
We want them to be punished.
Deepening tension in Ukraine.
The United States is prepared. Our allies are prepared.
The concern for loved ones who might be caught in the line of fire. And Canadian caretaker, why he's trading his skates for solitude on a tiny Irish island.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Chris Galis.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Police are finally making some progress at the Ambassador Bridge blockade, but the effort to restore the flow of goods at Canada's busiest border crossing has fallen short so far. Our Sean O'Shea was there as police moved in and made some arrests. Sean.
Chris, police faced some criticism for not being able to clear the blockade on Saturday, so today their tactics were slightly different. Just before dawn Sunday morning, a man holds a flag as he looks out on police. Behind him, a small group of protesters who stayed out here all night. The remnants of a group that stopped traffic on the Ambassador Bridge linking Ontario and Michigan over the past week, disrupting the two countries' most important trade link. On Saturday, after police arrived, big rigs and most other vehicles gave up on the blockade. Only a few refused to leave, like these two pickup trucks. Police didn't push them out at first, something business groups said was urgently necessary.
These disruptions in Canada have an impact on the United States. That's why the U.S. is paying very close attention to this.
This morning, the approach was different. Police weren't asking protesters to leave, they were telling them. Police approached the drivers of the two trucks. When they refused to leave, police arrested them both. At the same time as they ordered reporters recording their operation to leave.
Walk that way behind the barricade.
I'm walking.
Behind the barricade now, please.
Further up the roadway, larger trucks were told to leave, and they did without any resistance.
The police are puppets of the state.
I don't think it's going to end for a while, but it's going to end.
Police later fanned out in a private parking lot and ordered everyone to move their vehicles, threatening to tow away those who didn't. Small in number, they just won't go away, causing police to remain on the roadway. Police made more arrests this afternoon because, despite their efforts, more protesters kept coming out. At this point, the Ambassador Bridge remains closed, and officials say it will reopen only when it's safe to do so. Chris.
Sean O'Shea in Windsor, Ontario. Thank you very much, Sean. Breaking news out of Ottawa tonight, where the mayor says he's reached a back-channel deal with protest organizers to limit their demonstration to the area immediately surrounding Parliament Hill. The agreement calls for vehicles to roll out of residential neighbourhoods over the next 24 hours. And as Abigail Bimman explains, the deal is welcome news for Ottawa residents fed up with the 3-week protest.
Don't provoke.
Thanks for
Don't
saying
provoke.
that.
Fed up, Ottawa residents fill several intersections trying to block protest vehicles headed downtown.
The almost incomprehensible failure of leadership in this city.
Took a bunch of random citizens being annoyed to actually stop trucks and not police.
This video shows two vehicles that kept rolling as people got in front of them.
He hit me. I was so shocked that somebody would do that. I was standing in the road and that's not allowed, but they've been blocking streets for 2 weeks now.
Late Sunday, a potential breakthrough. Ottawa's mayor released letters showing Convoy leadership agreed to move out of residential zones and stick to Parliament Hill. Police pegged the crowd at 4,000 Saturday. Here at the War Memorial, the fencing that surrounded the site remains down. Saturday, a group of protesters, many who appeared to be veterans or wearing medals, camouflage, or berets, took down that fencing. The Office of the Minister of Public Services and Procurement says PSPC put up the original fencing and they plan to replace it as soon as they're told it's safe to do so. But as of Sunday, no fence.
We'll put a man on it then.
Excellent. This is on you guys.
Perfect.
Many concerned about hands-off policing, including handing off responsibility for guarding the memorial to the protesters. And this time-lapse video shows there wasn't always someone at the War Memorial overnight. Concern, too, about the views of some of those involved.
And they're trying to say that the guys are, they were waving. It's a Nazi salute! It's preposterous. It's so desperate and insane. And the police didn't do anything because they know it's ridiculous. They know themselves it's ridiculous.
In this video, veteran Jeremy McKenzie talks about the importance of having free access to the site. He was recently arrested for firearms violations in Nova Scotia. The Canadian Anti-Hate Network flags him for, among other things, a live stream about burning Parliament down and his phrase, gun or rope, for how to deal with those ideologically opposed.
And I think we all have to recognize that, the harm that is being caused by these individuals, and it's not about people's frustration with the pandemic.
A comment from Bill Blair that directly contradicts every person we've spoken to on Ottawa streets.
We're spreading love because we are the focus of the world right now, Ottawa.
Freedom! Protesters maintain they're here peacefully, upset with COVID mandates. Abigail Bimman, Global News, Ottawa.
During an interview on the West Block with Mercedes Stephenson, Emergency Preparedness Minister Bill Blair hinted the Trudeau government is actively considering using emergency powers to end the blockades.
We also are prepared to use whatever legislative and resource tools, and what I mean by that is every federal resource will be considered in order to protect critical infrastructure and to keep Canadians safe. The police have an important job to do, but there are other jobs that also need to be done, and we'll make sure they get done.
Are you prepared to invoke the Emergencies Act?
Certainly, I will tell you, the Emergencies Act has been under very fulsome consideration right from the first day as to what needs to be done. But the Emergencies Act, the Federal Emergencies Act, is really contingent upon the provinces exhausting their authorities and turning to us and saying we need more.
Blair says the federal government is working with Ontario to make sure the province is in fact exhausting all options. The current iteration of the Emergencies Act, passed in 1988, has never been used. The Canadian Forces is investigating 3 serving members of an elite military counterterrorism unit known as Joint Task Force 2 for allegedly taking part in the protests in the nation's capital. In a statement today, the commander of the Canadian Special Operations Forces Command says, quote, "I expect our members to act in ways that demonstrate Canadian Armed Forces values and ethics and to uphold them both on and off duty." Global News has learned 2 of the JTF-2 Special Operations assaulters refused to be vaccinated and are in the process of being released from duty. Some provinces are moving forward with their roadmaps out of this pandemic. On Saturday, Quebec lifted limits on home gatherings, and on Monday, gyms will be open again and sports leagues will be back. Nova Scotia will begin easing restrictions in 3 phases starting tomorrow, including lifting border restrictions for domestic travelers. Vaccine passports are still required in both provinces, at least for now, but not in Saskatchewan, which, as Nathaniel Dove reports, will drop its proof of vaccination requirement at midnight.
Starting Monday, Dale McKay won't know the vaccination status of his customers coming into his restaurants in Saskatoon and Regina, and he's fine with that.
It is a bit of a chore for restaurants and for businesses to be checking passports every time we have a new guest come in.
Since October, patrons were required to show proof that they were fully vaccinated or of a negative COVID-19 test.
We chose not to necessarily go with the negative test just because it just added another level of kind of confusion. When was the test taken, all that kind of stuff.
But on Monday, the province is dropping those requirements. Premier Scott Moe said businesses who wish to keep enforcing it must do so on their own.
If a municipality or a private business wanted to move forward with that policy, I suppose they should do so. My advice would be to consult a lawyer.
McKay is accepting the change and that some customers might have COVID like they might have the flu. He says his staff will keep wearing masks even after all other health orders are dropped at the end of the month, so customers feel safe. He just wants things to go back to normal. But the virus that causes COVID-19 is still spreading. This snapshot of the health authority's internal COVID-19 dashboard, obtained by Global News, shows nearly 400 people needing care. According to a recent doctor's update, the non-ICU system is at capacity. And in the push to get to the living with COVID stage of the pandemic, the government stopped sharing daily updates. An infectious disease physician says people need more information, and now is not the time to drop public safety measures.
And the challenge here again is trying to sort of understand sort of what the rationale for all of this was, and sort of what the rush was.
Wong is worried fewer people will get their shots without the health order in place. You need vaccines to live with COVID. Nathaniel Dove, Global News, Saskatoon.
At least a dozen countries, including Canada and the U.S., have told their citizens to get out of Ukraine as Western allies warn Russian forces could invade at any moment. Canadian military trainers have been pulled out and are now in Poland, and Canadian embassy staff in Kyiv have also been relocated. Jennifer Johnson reports.
A Russian submarine spotted sailing towards the Black Sea as Russia's naval aircraft, troops, and military equipment surround much of Ukraine. U.S. President Joe Biden spoke with Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky Sunday, working on a diplomatic solution to the crisis. Zelensky is telling his citizens not to show Russia any fear or panic.
The best friend for enemies, that is panic in our country.
But fears are growing that a Russian invasion could happen as soon as this week.
The United States is prepared, our allies are prepared, and now it's up to Russia to determine what the next step they will take is.
Ukrainians have taken to the streets, urging peace, but many expecting an invasion.
Of course I'm worried, but am I afraid? Not.
The U.S. is sending a total of 6,000 additional troops to Eastern Europe, not to enter a war, but to defend NATO territory. America and its NATO partners have repeatedly warned Putin they will shut Russia off from billions of international financial transactions should Russia invade.
The response from the United States and our allies will be swift, it will be united, it will be severe.
But some experts believe Putin is more concerned about controlling Ukraine, once part of the Soviet Union, than punishing economic sanctions.
We think that Putin's some kind of rational actor calculating the cost-benefit analysis of invasion, when in fact he's thinking about his place in the history books 50 years from now.
Diplomatic staff members from the U.S., Canada, and other nations are evacuating or relocating. A growing list of countries have told their citizens to get out. Parishioners at this Indiana church are concerned for their pastor, who went to Ukraine for a family funeral.
I'm not going to go to the worst case scenario, but we are worried about him and his family.
Over 100,000 Russian troops are amassed on Ukraine's border, while others train for battle in Belarus. Russian missiles are also prepared to launch, a buildup of firepower that could strike on very short notice. Jennifer Johnson, Global News, Washington.
Up next, tiny bugs causing big trouble. Health experts battle a threat made worse by the pandemic. As if we needed it, during the pandemic, there is another global health emergency that's receiving little attention. Before COVID-19, drug-resistant superbugs killed more than 1.2 million people worldwide in 2019. As Candice Daniel reports, experts say the superbug health crisis has worsened during COVID.
Jeff Summerhays was born with cystic fibrosis, a degenerative disorder that can cause severe damage to the lungs. To make things worse, when Jeff was a teenager, he also contracted a bacterial infection. It's a battle he's been fighting for decades.
My lung function has been deteriorating about 1 to 2% a year since I was 17.
He had been taking antibiotics to fight it, but the bug had adapted and evolved, rendering Jeff's treatments useless.
Now the problem is that these microorganisms are smart. And so they develop resistance through mutations and such that allow them to kind of circumvent what that antibiotic is trying to do.
It's called antimicrobial resistance, or AMR. It's when microorganisms become resistant against treatments used to cure infections, including antibiotics. And experts say the pandemic has added to the problem.
It's worsening under COVID because resources have been directed away from antibiotic stewardship in hospitals. And so we're really behind the 8 ball.
Another reason for this is the misuse of antibiotics to fight COVID-19. Research from the Americas showed more than 90% of patients admitted to hospital for COVID were prescribed an antimicrobial, but only 7% needed them.
Certainly, there have been a couple of studies that have shown that antibiotic-resistant organisms in hospital settings have been on the rise through this pandemic.
As for Jeff, after years of having CF and a superbug, his lungs were ravaged. He needed a double lung transplant to live. Jeff says the doctors told him the superbug would make his surgery more dangerous.
We knew going in that the big battle would be the bacterial battle. There's only a 50% chance of survivability 1 year post-transplant.
Despite the odds, he had the life-saving transplant in 2018. Jeff knows if his antibiotic-resistant superbug causes a flare-up again, it's likely there are no more drug treatment options to keep him alive. What's the feeling that you carry with you along with the odds every day of your life?
Right now, it's gratefulness. I'm still here.
Candace Daniel, Global News.
Next on Global National, with Valentine's Day approaching, new research shows which gender is hit harder by heartbreak. As many Canadians prepare to celebrate Valentine's Day with their partners, others might be newly single, fresh off a breakup and alone. A new study out of the University of British Columbia found when men leave a relationship, they seem to be at greater risk of mental illness. And as Jamie Maracher explains, the pandemic could be making things worse.
When Toronto relationship coach Roman Miranov's marriage ended 7 years ago, he says he was devastated. He fell into a mild depression.
I felt like that was the end of my life. For the first couple of weeks, I felt terrible and I just didn't know what to do.
Researchers from the University of British Columbia have found when relationships break down, men are at an increased risk of anxiety, depression, and even suicide compared to women. Of 47 Canadian and Australian participants, 96% shared those feelings and accounts. John Olive, a professor of nursing and lead author on the study, says the risk of male suicide quadruples after a marital separation.
If we think about suicide prevention and knowing that men suicide 3 to 4 times the rate of women, I think it's such a given that the relationship breakdowns do put men at risk.
The COVID-19 pandemic is only making the situation worse for many men. The study found they are turning to substance use, drinking to cope, and because of social restrictions, they are losing close ties with friends. Ottawa psychotherapist Sean Hale offers sessions online and says he's seeing the same thing in his practice.
After a breakup, if you're feeling these emotions and you can't get them out, they can lead into those kind of feelings of depression because you're kind of dealing with it on your own.
Olive says there needs to be more mental health care options geared to men. He hopes to see people reach out before a breakup, gaining valuable communication and coping skills.
Strategies for working through those things and splitting amicably and then working their way through those challenging situations.
Mironov agrees. The 39-year-old now has a new partner and uses his experience to help others.
Don't go into that vicious cycle. Break out of it by reaching out to someone.
A decision experts say could be life-saving. Jamie Maracher, Global News, Toronto.
Coming up, dream job. How a Canadian former hockey player and his partner became the caretakers of a remote Irish island. Believing in yourself might just get you to the Olympic podium, and that is certainly the case for Canada's Stephen Dubois, who added a bronze to his medal count in 500-meter short track. Following his skate, Dubois said he knew he had the potential to win medals. He almost didn't qualify for the final, though, after a collision with a South Korean skater. But after review, South Korea was penalized for an illegal late pass, and the rest is history. As we hopefully begin to emerge from the pandemic, many of us are eager to put isolation behind us and resume our normal lives. But a former pro hockey player from Saskatchewan and his Dutch girlfriend are doing pretty much the opposite. They beat out thousands of other applicants to become caretakers of an uninhabited island off the coast of Ireland. Redmond Shannon has their story.
A shot at tips and they score! Brock Montgomery!
In a decade of minor league hockey, Brock Montgomery scored plenty of goals and threw his fair share of punches too.
And there's going to be a fight. Montgomery was...
Off the ice, he practiced yoga and mindfulness to deal with the stress. Playing professionally in the Netherlands, he met Claire de Haas. Travelling together just before the pandemic, Claire saw a job ad. Caretakers wanted for summer cottages on a small Irish island.
I showed Brock immediately and then he said, where can we apply? And we applied the next day.
The only problem, thousands of others did too, and then COVID-19 hit, stranding them on an Indonesian island.
It was kind of surreal because we had the island to ourselves for a little bit there. Something that'll never happen again.
They stayed there for months and volunteered before heading to Canada and back to Europe.
This year, a few weeks ago, we got a message from them if we were still in, and we immediately said yes.
Now, as restrictions ease for the rest of us, Brock and Claire are going into self-imposed exile, off the grid, for 6 months.
So there'll be a solar panel that gives us enough to charge our phone and our laptop and stuff like that. And they bring food to us every day.
Although solar panels may only go so far in an Irish summer.
Claire's always joking that we're not made of sugar. She's Dutch, so
yeah.
So we're expecting some rain.
Seclusion has perhaps one major challenge for any couple.
It's like we're not leaving, so we just have to get used to it and enjoy.
Not kill each other.
That mindfulness training may come in very handy. And if Brock ever feels homesick, he can just squint into the Atlantic sunset over the next island over, known here as the Sleeping Giant. Next stop, Canada. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
And that is Global National for this Sunday night. I'm Chris Galis. Tonight, your Canada is Peggy's Cove, Nova Scotia. Thanks for watching, everyone. Donna Friesen is back tomorrow. Hope you have a great night.